And we are recording. Welcome to Melbourne Unreal. I am your host, Tony Jack the Bear Mance. We're coming to you from Deluxe Mastering Studios here in Melbourne, Australia, the world's most livable city. And I'm absolutely delighted to have as my guest today Mr. Tom Larkin.
Thank you, sir.
G'day, mate. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good.
Good to see you. For those of you who don't know Tom, been living under a rock. Tom is a drummer in the legendary band Shihad from New Zealand, and Tom is also owner of In the City Studios, which is located just down the road from us over here.
Studios in the city.
Studios in the city.
That's where it is. It's in the city.
It is. It's definitely in the city, no doubt about that. And Tom is also about to embark on putting this very exciting course together, aimed towards bands, musicians, and artists. And as you guys know, just working with creatives and artistic people is a passion of mine. And Tom is, right away into it, and he'll be able to tell us more about the course. But anyway, thank you for joining us today.
No problem.
Wonderful to have you here.
Happy Good Friday.
Yeah, happy Good Friday. It is Good Friday today for those of you. But you'll be getting this a little bit after the fact. We were meant to have you on the last episode. Unfortunately, something happened. But anyway, you're here today, and it's good.
I'm pleased to be here.
Good to have you on board, my friend.
Thanks,
so Tom, tell us what's been happening with you of late. You've got fuckloads of shit on the go right now. So what's been happening for you right now, and what's been exciting you?
What's exciting me? Okay, currently, obviously, I'm a father to two young girls.
Yes,
just
indeed.
one of the greatest things I've ever done.
Yeah.
I think it's one of those things that as a musician that you fear. I think sometimes bringing children into the world because of what they'll change, and it's funny to see what they change and what they don't change.
Yeah.
And I think it's that's been a great part of everything, and so I'm enjoying that ride.
Beautiful.
So outside of that, which is my family thing, it's really to do with. We basically have a kind of community here in Brunswick, and we operate a recording studio, and I run a management company called Home Surgery. And what we're doing at the moment is bringing that under an umbrella and developing a pathway for artists based on the kind of knowledge I've accumulated over 27 years. Mm-hmm. At the moment, we're testing it out. We're working out how it works, and it's in development, it's in beta, but it's a really exciting proposition. And I think one of the things that I love about it is that it plays to the strengths that I have, because I always kind of regard myself, I kind of look at what I've done, and look at myself as a bit of a jack of all trades. I've been a career artist, and I've worked for over 27 years in a band, and but then also I've developed a production career, and then owner of a recording studio, and then I've been managing bands alongside that as well.
Yeah.
And on one hand, that kind of makes you this jack of all trades, and then I realised that actual position is actually a modern proposition, and you're able to do it in this era, but that also that there's a way to blend those perspectives and find something that's a little bit more unusual, because there's a dimensional. I feel that there's a dimensional insight that I get where I can look at things from all corners, you know what I mean? And so that's been fascinating to me, to put something together that's based on that position rather than deep diving onto any one corner.
Yeah. I think what's been good, we've discussed this before, is that you've, I guess I found my niche, and you're finding your niche, and I'm really surprised in all this time that no one's come along and found these gaping holes in the market, if you will, and trying to service them. And I went to one of your seminars, and I didn't get there for the entire time, but I got enough there and we've obviously had a discussion about it. But the one thing I really love, the one thing that really makes your shit stand out, man, is that it's not just all theory-based stuff, and there's a lot of stuff that's practical. Yep. You also tap into very important area, which is psychology, helping bands to understand, how things work, and on a mental level how things work. And it's a very holistic thing, but also it provides the bands and artists and people that would go through your course with practical things to take away from it. Audio courses are fantastic. Formal education is fantastic. I think those things need to exist, and they provide great opportunities for artists, bands, whatever, to learn. But one of my bugbears has been, okay, you got all this knowledge, all this theory. How do you apply it? How do you take that into the real world and make it work? What you're doing is actually giving people these steps and giving them things to take away that they can apply and use and make it work, because bands and artists are not business people. You know, they're creatives, and that's great, but these days they have to be a bit of a jack of all trades, and I think what you're providing is that. So it's great that you're bringing that.
I think the thing is there that I don't actually agree that bands and artists are not business people. I think that there's still an ambivalence around those two things, but I think that, you know, what I'm doing is targeted at those who want to wrap a business around their music, and there's one argument that says art is for art's sake and it needs to exist on its own.
Yeah.
And I think that that's true, but there is a huge amount of people who want to mix the two and be able to kind of make either a lifestyle or, you know, get to a wider audience with their art, and that requires a entrepreneurial business sensibility. Now, I think that there's a lot of confusion for artists out there around that proposition, and there still is. It's been there for a long time, and I think that in that confusion, in that grey area, traditionally artists, that's the point at which artists can be taken advantage of. But the thing that I notice, and what, you know, kind of like the gap that I found, was that, you know, you would have basically the education side of things tends to be based around expanding skills. And so you would go to a course, whatever that course may be, and it would be primarily around, getting deeper into what you should do, or, you know, if you're a musician, it's going to expand your kind of knowledge base, and that's a critical part of everything. And then on the other side, you'd have kind of music industry stuff where it really focuses on the industry itself and how the industry is put together. And I think that there's this gap in between the two, which is about how do you become a great artist and a sustainable artist and an artist that understands how to merge those two things and be comfortable with it, and to do it in a way that really respects your original intent. Because I think that oftentimes the grey area between those two worlds causes a lot of angst. And I think that that there's a way to kind of present that platform, to present that kind of proposition in a way that anyone can be comfortable with it. And, you know, we're seeing the modern era, and I typify the modern era as really kind of bringing up, you know, three kind of core issues, but it's brought about by the fact that the traditional music industry, or the investment side of the music industry, where they help an artist work on music and develop music and all that kind of stuff, has really shied away from, you know, high risk investments. And to be honest, you know, knowing a lot of people in labels, it's fair enough. It's like such a high risk proposition, and you stand to lose so much. And I think that the music industry nowadays is so personal. We're in an era where a lot of the people who work in labels really mean it. We've lost a lot of the opportunists in the music industry, and it's down to the majority of people in the music industry now are for real, or love music, or have come from that, otherwise they wouldn't be here.
Sure.
And that I find now that, oh, that was good.
It's the commissioner.
I just hung up on my manager.
that all learns him.
What an arsehole.
You're a manager that has a manager. I love it.
Yeah,
That's great.
yeah.
But no, it's good. There's nothing wrong with that. Yeah. I think it's good. It's good to have that. It's like
You gotta do it.
It's like I'm a mentor, but I have a mentor as well. You know, it's nothing wrong with that.
Anyway, yeah. Well, and this is the thing. It's that kind of relationship. I know that he's probably got something really fucking urgent that he just needs a fucking answer on right now.
Yeah.
And that I'm punishing him on Good Friday. And, you know, he's probably going, I've got to get this done before I get off with the kids to do this. And, I just need an answer right now, and I'm fucking him over.
Do you want to stop the podcast? And
No, we'll be right.
Yeah.
He'll text me if it's really important.
Okay.
I hope.
All right. We may be seeing history in the making here. You never know.
Possibly.
Something.
Disintegration of a relationship. Look, as I was saying, I think, you know, the music industry is now more personal than it ever has been. And,
Sure.
and if someone takes a bet on an artist, they really are hanging themselves out, you know, on a limb if it doesn't come off. Yeah. And so for that reason, you know, the investment side of the music industry is retreated. And that means that the kind of the journey of an artist to develop and to find mentorship and guidance and to connect with other artists and to connect with other influencers or to have different perspectives, that kind of environment and community has frittered away, and we're much more isolated, and the digital economy means that we tend to kind of do things in isolation, in bedrooms, in smaller communities, where the kind of narrative is held online. But the other side of that is that digital technology has allowed a scope and a scale previously unimaginable. I mean, I look at it and kind of go, there's a lot of people who talk about, there's no money in the music industry anymore, there's no investment, there's no this. And I go, yeah, but I can record a track, release a track, and have it global for the price of a recording software. And that proposition was never on the table. Also, travel's cheaper. I remember when we first started looking at traveling to Europe, like those costs were huge. Recording costs were huge. They were insurmountably huge. And you had to really kind of, make a case for being able to attract that funding. So on one hand, yes, the money's gone down, but the opportunity's gone up.
Oh, definitely. And accessibility to, as you said, to software, to technology, where, when I started back in the 80s, I mean, to think of how much it would cost to go to a studio and to invest and whatnot. And it was also limited to who could go in there. I mean, unless you had funding behind you. Whereas now, like I said, with the cost of software, a computer, and if you're resourceful enough,
and that's it.
You can make it happen.
You can make it happen. However, between those, two kind of poles where you've got, a lack of investment, but you've got the advantages of, the digital economy. The one thing that is missing, that hasn't been nurtured, which is the idea of coaching, mentorship, that was previously taken up, as a vocation by producers, managers, A&R people, that kind of community, as dysfunctional as it could be at times, often provided artists with a platform where they could grow and they could be nurtured. And there's so many great stories about, those artists that we take as household names, classic household names now, that often had, work that didn't connect or work that didn't come through, and someone took the bet on them that they would deliver based on gut instinct and their talent, and then you would see this fantastic result. And I think we're seeing, I think that the symptom that we're seeing at the collapse, at the kind of, at the idea of a festival, I mean, it's like practically you can count on one hand the amount of headlining can carry a festival artists in at least the rock community that were developed over the last 10 to 15 years.
Yeah.
And that oftentimes putting a festival on as a proposition is about going back to the artists that did have patience and did have development and bringing them into headline a festival, because it's that time and that kind of relationship that both both the fan bases have, and that the journey that the music has that allows an artist to just grow into, a massive proposition. And I think we're seeing far less of that because the fundamental, kind of like idea of development and making shit better is kind of out the window, and it's being left into chaos. It means that certain people can take advantage of that, and some of them are really, really good at it.
Definitely.
But I don't think it's something that's that plays to the strengths of what art is, and that I think that there's a huge gap there. I think there's a huge gap, and that it's needed to build things up.
Well, artist development, I think, is huge, and not just artistically, but I think holistically for people. And I remember years ago, this A&R guy from Capitol was telling me when he signed up Little River Band back in, they did a 7-album deal, and the mentality behind that was that we're going to give it up to 4 albums for this band to break it, because we understand that it's going to be a long-term proposition.
Yep.
If it happens on album 1, fucking great. But we're going to go up until we know that, more than likely it'll probably take up to 4 albums to establish the band and to have them working and get radio behind them, et cetera, which will then hopefully pay off, and then, pay off the investment. As you were saying before, just this commitment to the artists and to develop them and whatnot. Actually, an interesting thing, I don't know if you saw it, Tom, but the other day I saw on Facebook, Sony have now started up this like postgraduate course for people to bring A&R back and you know, which I think's fucking fantastic, mate, because, you know, I remember, you know, 25, 30 years ago, an A&R guy was the guy who he knew which end of the microphone you'd point at an instrument. You know, he'd be out 6 or 7 nights a week, you know, finger on the pulse, checking out bands. You know, there were music guys that knew lots, and I'm not saying that the current A&R people don't, but I think that A&R over time has kind of diluted somewhat. And
I think that the focus that a lot of labels put on A&R is diluted. It's interesting, like I say, a lot of the people who are still within the music community tend to be, you know, really strong on the music side, and it's kind of funny that a lot of the people I know in A&R in Australia really are music focused. They're really passionate about it, but it's an under-resourced side of the label structure. And what it means is that there's a watermark, you know, and there always was a watermark, but there are the hidden gems that exist underneath it that just need, you know, some nutrients, but they're not available, you know what I mean? And so it's really about understanding that there are many more possibilities that are left off the table, but it's really up to artists to kind of, you know, put that in place for themselves. And I think that one of the things that, or the things that, you know, I think that the Sony initiative around, and what they're kind of doing is developing A&R. I think it's actually a great idea.
Totally.
But the thing that I take heart on, I suppose the example that I look at as the leading light, is what I regard as the bleeding edge of the DIY kind of community, where that kind of pressure to deliver, or the idea of having things that take time to grow and develop into what they're supposed to, and have an honesty and integrity. When the DIY community get that right, it's a fantastic result, and it reflects the patience and community and environment that previously you would have at an investment scale. Does that make sense? So if you have, you know, and of course the example I'm talking about is Courtney Barnett, and how she's come up, and she, you know, she really kind of like, I think, plugged into her community and found support in her community, and you know, had a real kind of like, and she brought herself to the table.
That's
she you know, and that for me is one of the great things about it. Is how honest she is.
Her authenticity shines through, and she's happy to represent her people, her language,
absolutely,
right down to, like, you know, singing about Preston, you know, about a suburb in Melbourne. It's parochial, and she's happy to stand up and represent, and sing in an Australian accent, and not give in to the whims of, you know, you need to sing an American accent, you need to fit a certain style. And, you know, she's just fucking honest.
Well,
man.
The thing about it was that, I mean, for me, what was amazing about Courtney was I actually saw her in the UK at one of the Aussie barbecues, amazing, you know, program that they run internationally, and I had actually not tuned in at all. I mean, you know, I have certain proclivities in music, and at that point, she wasn't really kind of like front and center for me. It was another part of the kind of, oh yeah, there's another buzz band and everything like that.
Yeah.
But I mean, I've got to check her out. And it was just her and a guitar, and she played De Preston, and it hit that line about the disabled stuff in the toilet, and I just fucking cried right there, just burst into tears. It was just like, oh my God. And it came from nowhere. And it was just like that kind of power to do that. And ever since that point, I've just gone, she's amazing. She's the shit. It's incredible. And then to look into how, you know, into some of the things, I because the whole thing that I'm doing now started as a book, and it's going to continue to be as a book. And in part of the process of writing the book about this stuff, I interviewed Jen Clower, and
her manager, and
I think label is really the function that Jen does, and it was one of the most arresting and powerful interviews I did, because Jen's mindset is very experienced and very considered, and it comes from a place of having to deal with the turbulence of having that kind of pressure from a label and all that kind of stuff, and then to back off and find it, and to kind of lean into her art at a sustainable pace. And again, it's that growth, nurturing, you know, or the reality that's wrapped around it, which allowed something like Courtney to come up. And or the idea of it, and I think that it's. I mean, that's not taking anything away from Courtney herself, but it's
no doubt.
It's really I found talking to her amazing, and the other side of that was that, and this is one of the things that I found, is that it's interesting within the DIY community, because there's this one kind of like, with anything there's another side, and that side is that sometimes people tout DIY as a hedge against being taken advantage of. And then often you find that really it's an excuse for not delivering.
Yeah.
And that real DIY is fucking hard work, and is in fact the most insane proposition a musician can buy into.
Yeah.
And it is the level beyond. It's the level where you're not choosing to offload your responsibilities to a team so that you can concentrate on your art. You're taking it all on yourself. And the people that do well at that are fucking heroes.
Yeah, no doubt. Because it's a lot of work, man. It's a lot of stuff to take on, and I think that when you can take some personal responsibility for what you do, and do the work and commit yourself to it, and I think it's good also for an artist to have knowledge in all areas. I mean, even with what I do, I'm always happy to share with my clients the stuff I do, because invariably when they do lots of their own mixes, so they want to play them out, I'm happy to say, we'll do this and do that and do that and do that, so but also the more they understand about the process of mastering here, and they know what can be done, more importantly what I can't achieve at that level, then they can take that back when they go back to mix a record and go, oh shit, okay, I know that I need to take care of this, I need to take care of that, because that's going to allow us to get a better job, which allows them to get better value. But no, you're absolutely right. They're fucking heroes, man. And fucking full respect to those artists, man, who take the time and dedicate themselves to become as well versed as they can in all areas of making music and the business side of things. And of course, but then I think that also invites. To get the right people into their team, it also means that they can have better dialogue with those people too. So, a musician that understands a bit about, you produce a band, but isn't it? I think it's better to be able to deal with a musician that is conversant in the language and the techniques and what's going on. They may not be an expert at it, but at least they can articulate what they want to you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that one of the things that I found when I sit in that kind of like that, what I regard as that kind of like bird's eye view of a lot of things, is that I found myself much more empathetic. I mean, I think that's part of age as well.
Yeah, definitely.
But much more empathetic. If you ring up a label and and there's a problem, it becomes one of those propositions where you can see it from both sides.
Yeah.
And actually model what it is from both sides. And I think that in the older music industry, there was a position that artists would take that I think at times would be so one-eyed that you would forget what impact you'd have on others. And I think that that's become, as I've grown older, a stronger part of how I believe you need to be as a musician. I mean, when we were, and I understand how these things come about, but I remember, as Shihad, when we were like, when there was a lot of pressure on, and there was also not much money. There's a kind of a great bridge that happens with artists where, I can see artists who are currently like really kind of cutting it right now, but you can actually see the cash pressure in there, that they're living on the bones of their ass, but there's a huge amount of cash flow going on.
Yeah.
A lot of money spent, a lot of money coming in, and very little going to that. And that produces a kind of an environment where an artist can become very one-eyed. And I realised that, in our act, we stayed in that realm for quite a while. And what ends up happening is you can end up treating people really badly. And it's one of those things you look back on, you go, that's not the right way to behave, and it's not the right way to kind of like have a long-term career. And I think it's important now more than ever that artists need to get real about their sense of personal responsibility for what's going on.
Definitely.
And that it's the idea of a entitled artist is becoming less and less sustainable. And so, taking care of personal responsibility, and that's what I like about when DIY is done at the top end.
Yes.
Ultimately, it comes down to full responsibility for the good and the bad.
Totally.
And that was one of the things that I found amazing about Jean Chloe, is how adverse to blame she was to blaming others.
Yeah.
It was like, no, it's not about that. This is about me.
Yeah. Well, what's the saying? You know, when you point the finger, you got three pointing back at you.
There you go.
Yeah, you know. So, and I think that's the first step to taking responsibility, man, is to just forget about blame, taking it on, just understanding that ultimately you're the creator of whatever you do.
Yep.
You know, whether directly or indirectly, but you're ultimately the impetus of that, and that what's happening out there is the reflection of what's happening in here and what's happening in your heart. So, no, you're absolutely totally spot on there, my friend.
And I think that's, you will find that with younger artists, that they find it hard to navigate that, find that true north, in finding, a sense of personal responsibility and a sense of empathy. But I can see why, because the kind of information out there, it's either upskill or this is, this is a panel on how you get on a festival. And one of the things that I've kind of found is great truth with the idea of cracking the music industry. I kind of feel it's like this. Number one, all things considered, it's not totally true, but all things considered, as an artist, the music you release is now part of your promo material. It exists alongside your photos, your videos, your social media, and then there's your recorded output. And your recorded output is very important because it's the emotional and connective, media that you need, and it's also, it's your work and it's your body of work and it's your expression of yourself at its most raw and vulnerable. Yeah. But its value economically is really no longer on the table as something to sell off or invest or to put a great deal of weight on it as an investment vehicle. As that's gone. And I think that the bottom line is that a lot of kind of like people, when they kind of face the music industry and face the music community, they kind of come down to these kind of questions of, how do I get on a festival, or how do I get on radio, or how do I do this, or how do I do that? And the answer is, and has always been, you got to be fucking good, and you got to be, you got to stand out, and no amount of technique is going to save you. There's no amount of email or press kit that's going to change the proposition when someone hears your song and your art and reacts to it. That proposition comes from a different place. And I think that it's really important to understand what you're doing. That's a sense of, taking a sense of responsibility. But to think that somehow you can game the industry or do things a certain way that actually changes that proposition, I think it's not accurate and not important enough for an artist to take as a priority. You know what I mean? It's about making great songs and making great music and finding yourself and expressing it through that vehicle, and that is going to get all of that for you if it comes off.
It's all about good. It's all about the song. I've always said it's always about the song. It is the most important thing. The song is everything. And I think there's still a misconception by some people and even by some artists. They talk about, well, back in the day it was the halcyon days, the good old days, but it was fucking hard to get on radio back then, mate. I remember working at Triple M in the 90s, and they only had very small amount of slots for new music to go in. It's the same as today. I think there's that misconception that things were better back then, or artists made more money back then, and nothing could be further from the fucking truth. I mean, there still always was going to be a certain amount of people at the apex that were going to make the big money and drive the Ferraris. It was going to always, and that hasn't changed as far as I'm concerned.
Well, I think, you know what? I actually think it has changed, and the difference is that I think, if you set it up right, you can actually, and particularly if you're doing something that's an interesting proposition or something that isn't necessarily commercially facing on an art level, now is the best time, because you actually are able to put the stuff out into the world and find your community and develop that community and grow that community, whereas you were shut out of the game previously. You were gone.
But even within that context, I still think there was always going to be that 5% that were
absolutely
uber successful.
And I don't think that has. Let me put it like this. I don't think that has changed as a proposition, but I think that there are people who have been successful, that 5%, who now do not have the appropriate pathway or support that previous generations had to become the 5%, or to actually get to that point where they, and I think that to me is the great kind of gap right now, is how do we solve the mentorship training community proposition. And I think that there's real answers in the DIY community. I think that there's and that there's real answers in artists who are now taking responsibility for themselves and understanding how to plug into the digital ecosystem. But I think the big thing that's missing is a clear pathway to kind of develop those skills yourself, and that the current kind of education or training community doesn't provide well for how to take your music and wrap a structure around it, and also how to sustain yourself as you go through this, because my whole thing is that it's about living a musical lifestyle. And in terms of me living a musical lifestyle, I've had to wear many hats, but I'm really comfortable with it. I do music every day. I don't do anything but music. It's always music based and music facing. But I had to kind of navigate things as they came through, and I had to figure out how I was going to stay involved in certain areas or make something a focus so that there was a platform that allowed me to stay there, or to be a part of things in a new way. And what I found is that I was inspired to check out one side of this, or inspired to check out one side of that, and another thing here, and it's led me to this place where I realised that now is the best time ever if you want to live a musical lifestyle. If you can put it together with what's on offer, it's actually better than ever. But you got to do the work, and you got to find out how to do it, and that's the gap, is that the ability to kind of put it all together. There's not many people talking about how to do that.
What do you think, if there is one thing, or the main thing, or one of the main things that hold back artists from, because there are so many fucking hopefuls, man, who they're very talented, they're motivated, they're talented in their own way. What do you think holds a lot of people back?
You know what? I think it's again, it comes down to these kind of three core problems that I look at. I think that it's any one or a combination of all three, which is it's a lack of resources, and resources come down to time, money, attention, and energy, right? So a lack of resources, a lack of resilience, and that can be.
I agree with that. The resilience is definitely a factor.
Huge. So resilience it really is about health, being able to have the vulnerability to expose yourself as an artist, to put yourself out there, but to have the strength for when you face rejection to be able to keep coming back. And I think the other one is about health, and a lot of times we deal. I mean, all of us either know someone or are someone, or there's a lot of the music community. I think it's like in the general population, the propensity for mental illness sits at around 1 in 5, and in the music community or the artistic community, the propensity for mental illness sits at around 1 in 3. Now, I think that there are several interesting conversations going on there, and I want to come back to that in a second, but I think that that's a strong part of the resilience factor, is understanding yourself, having the self-awareness to understand where you are in terms of your mental health and your capacity to be able to endure the kind of shit that comes along with being a musician. And the last kind of key problem that I see centers around visibility. With all this digital technology, and I know I've been kind of raving on about how great it is, the ability to cut through that, because everyone's out there, there's just so much noise, and that's actually where the kind of still the label system has an attractive proposition in that they will help you stand above that by investing in you, and that is kind of like where it's at. But those three factors, resilience, resources, and visibility, are the three kind of core problems that an artist in this day and age has to solve. And be aware that those are the kind of levers that they have to get right.
Yeah.
And these are the things outside of the quality of their creative work,
Yeah.
and their proposition as an artist and their connection.
Yeah.
That's outside of that. That's just the simple kind of like groundwork you have to have together. The mental health issue, I think that we're really only just kind of like pulling the cover up on what that really means.
Yeah.
And I think that it's still in a position where many people carry a huge amount of shame,
Yeah.
or feel fragile about discussing or admitting to or owning
Yeah.
that side of where they're at or what they may be. I've dealt with a variety of artists, and I grew up in a household where certain people had really strong struggles with mental illness, and one of the things that it starts to give you is that you get a lot of empathy for it, and I think that you get but you also get an understanding of how socially it's tough, but now I'm seeing that it's becoming discussed more and more and more.
Definitely.
And I think it's one of the most kind of heartening things that I'm seeing in this generation is the kind of attention and care and openness that's being started. And it reminds me, it reminds me of many of the kind of struggles that I remember in the 1980s when I was at high school. I am that old. That I saw social issues that were burgeoning at that point. That that were being fought for and coming through. And I think that this is another social issue that really is starting to kind of come to the table. And I think that as that discussion gets further advanced, we're going to see some real shifts. And if I can project into the future, I think that there's two conversations that I have with people around this. Because the first one is, there's three really, and we're still at the stage where we have to be, as a society, and particularly within the music community, have to understand that we have to eliminate shame attached to mental vulnerability.
Yeah.
Okay, we have to eliminate shame. We have to, lean into it. We have to support it, and we have to put the infrastructure in place. Whether we're a label, whether we're a management, whether we're recording studio, we have to have empathy and sympathy and strategy to be able to cope and help with people who struggle mentally.
And sorry to catch you, but this is where I just wanted to mention and give props to Phil Knight.
Oh yeah,
Your boy.
yeah.
And with What's Phil Worried About Today podcast, which I recommend you check out. And we're going to have Phil on the show to talk about this stuff because, I mean, what fucking courage, what balls this guy's got to come out, be so open and vulnerable. And Phil's not an like you. He's not an outgoing, extroverted guy. He's quite the opposite. And yet, for a guy like him to be able to overcome that mental hurdle, to come out and talk about stuff that, like you said, there's still shame. Even though we've made advances in, with the government and Beyond Blue and campaigns to help bring more awareness to mental illness and to help remove the stigma attached to it. Again, because it's not a tangible thing like a broken arm or a leg or a broken nose, there still is that fear around the unknown and the thing you can't see and touch. So, Phil, fucking I love you, man. You are fucking awesome. I can't wait to get you on the podcast to talk more about this stuff because it's really important, man. And I'm really glad you've raised it because again, coming from you, you're a guy who's got a profile, and it's great that you've brought this up. And I think the more people talk about it, the more awareness we bring around it, particularly in our community, which is, as you said, 1 in fucking 3, man. I mean, that's a fuckload. And and hopefully over time that will change as we bring more awareness and more empathy around the whole issue.
Totally. And I think at the same time, and it's a great example with someone like Phil because we've known him for a long time, and the nature of Phil's struggles, the fact that it was a genuine issue, took a long time to bubble to the surface that this was a thing. And in dealing with that, there was a lot of struggles within Shihad to cope with the impact of that. Mm-hmm. And we all have our own issues.
No doubt.
But I think one of the things, and I think this is probably central to kind of the two things that I wanted to kind of discuss about, the kind of the next phase of this whole kind of around the shame around mental illness, is number one, when we understand it like something that can be dealt with and something that there is support around, that it can be owned comfortably by someone, and that it's not a big deal to discuss it, and it's there and it can be tabled. The next thing is, and this is, I think, the interesting one, and I think Phil typifies this, is to take advantage of what it gives you.
Yeah.
And this is something within the artistic community that I think, I've watched it in an exploitative sense, where, an artist will be struggling with their health, but they produce such great work in some of the peaks before the valleys.
Yeah.
Where it's and they have previously watched certain infrastructures where that's been exploited, but there's not really a program to
help deal with it.
Well, help them, and what I mean by that is oftentimes it's like we're just going to keep them in a place where they can keep doing the ups so that we can keep the train rolling.
Yeah.
As opposed to, maybe this train is fucking this person over and we need to stop the train, no matter where it is on a business level, and help this person recover.
Yeah.
And there's that proposition, I think's a really important one going forward, and I think it's one in the music industry that needs to be called out if it's going on.
Yeah.
And I think that because it's about the health and wellness of our community and how kind we are to artists.
Yeah.
At the same time, again, there is that personal responsibility thing. I've dealt with a lot of artists who have these struggles, who refuse to share them, or refuse to get them diagnosed, or refuse to kind of do anything, or refuse to listen to the feedback they're getting in their immediate community, or their people around them, and that is a byproduct of the shame problem.
Yeah.
And I think that once we get through the shame thing, when someone is struggling, they've got to take care of their health. That is a personal responsibility.
Absolutely.
That's there. And I think that, there's one example of one of the people I work with who I absolutely love working with him, because he has certain, mental health stuff that comes up, and the way he deals with it is that he's aware of it. He's diagnosed, he's got the right stuff going and everything like that, and he's also aware of, what he's doing in his life and how it may be affecting things. But he does two things. He does, number one, if he's struggling, he's straight up honest about it, and he says, look, I can't cope today, and that there's that relationship and trust that we're all going to do the right thing when that happens.
Yes.
And it does. And so he's got that trust, and he's got, it makes him, has that trust, and it works really well. And then the next thing is, he also understands that there's all these strengths that come with it, and there's these opportunities that he's going to have a period where for these 2 weeks I'm going to be on fire, and he goes to town. And
he makes the most of it.
Makes the most of it, and he's aware enough to understand that he's writing that, and to understand how to communicate when he's got to fall off. And I love that mix. He's not ashamed.
Yep.
Responsible for what it is and dealing with it, and capitalizes on the advantages, and knows how to communicate when he has to recover.
Yeah.
And that's actually the magic mix.
Yeah.
And if we can kind of work out somehow to get the ongoing narrative within the music community and the wider community to be able to have that outcome ongoing, I think that's the most powerful sweet spot.
Yeah. I think and this is something that's really recently dawned on me in the last probably 4 or 5 months of my life, and it's really becoming the cornerstone of my work, and that is looking at self-esteem and looking at artist self-esteem, and understanding that I think everything really boils down to that, beyond the mental stuff, the mental illness. I think that when people can actually get to that point, and honestly get to a point where they can reclaim their self-esteem and know that there's nothing really wrong with them. We're all conditioned. We're all being programmed, and we're all just running automatically on this thing. I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy. I'm not deserving. I'm a piece of shit. Whatever. But until people can get to that point where they can actually understand there's nothing fucking wrong with them, that happiness is their fucking birthright, and they need to take some personal responsibility. In claiming that, then they've got a foundation that they can start building on, because they're not coming with the shame, they're not coming with the guilt, they're not coming with the bad feelings, they're not coming carrying all that excessive baggage, and then they can come with a different perspective, a different mindset, and hopefully get better outcomes. And that at least has been my experience, Tom, because for me, self-esteem was the biggest fucking hurdle that I think I had to overcome. And while on the outside world, happy, fucking gregarious, blah, 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 inside just fucking crime, man. Just fucking, oh, Mancy, you're a fucking legend. Oh, yeah, whatever. But until you get to that point where you can start, and I'm not saying I'm an expert at this. I'm not a fucking ninja. I'm not.
Well, you're an expert. Well, you're an expert for yourself.
But I'm fucking better at it now.
Yeah.
And so as a result of that, and how the world has shifted for me, it's like, oh, you know what? I want to share that shit with others. I want to share that with particularly because we are so self-critical. We're so self-doubting. He said 1 in fucking. See, I didn't know it was 1 in 3. You just fucking blew me away. I knew 1 in 5 in the community at large, but 1 in 3 in music.
Artists. With a broader umbrella of creatives.
You've blown me the fuck away with that statistic. Having said that, I'm not surprised, but nonetheless, that to me that's a fucking indictment, man. That's a fucking indictment.
Well, no, it's just reality. And and it's and what the indictment is.
It doesn't need to be though.
Well, here's the point: the indictment is not that fact. The indictment is the lack of support and the lack of framework we got around that. That's the indictment.
100%. Yep.
And then again, that's the thing. If struggling with mental health is seeing it as the same as that all of it's fucking wrong, I think that's part of the shame equation. You know what I mean? It's like no. Some of this is just how people are wired. Yeah. And so how do we work with that? Yeah. And how do we help them sustain themselves? Yeah. But I do think that self-esteem is a big part of it. I think that a lot of people in music are dealing with an inverted self-esteem issue where they get love from the many but have little love for themselves.
Yeah,
I
totally.
think and that oftentimes it can be a product of upbringing or environment or trauma or a combination of the lot that drives them into that kind of position.
Well, mate, it starts with fucking kids, Tom.
Of course it does.
It starts with kids. I mean, think about this, and I think I've mentioned this to you before, but you and I, everyone out there, we were all born and we were loved unconditionally as little infants.
Yeah.
Okay. We shut down happy. We wanted to be fed at 3 o'clock in the morning. Little inconvenience for little Tommy, but it doesn't matter because Tommy's gorgeous. Tommy's beautiful. We're going to feed Tommy. We're going to do whatever. And then we get to that point when then we start communicating even on a primitive way with our parents or guardians. And as a result of that, then that brings on, from mum and dad's point of view, some sense of responsibility that you know something between right and wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then all of a sudden, that love starts to become conditional.
True.
Tommy, Tommy, if you be quiet, I'll let you have that ice cream. You shut up, you can have this. But and so what happens then we learn that love is a conditional thing, approval is a conditional thing, acceptance is a conditional thing. When you provide what the other person wants, you get the love.
Yeah.
When you don't, it's withdrawn. And so we go through our fucking life just wanting to approval and validation. And so this is what people will do and say and whatever and sell their souls,
Totally. And I'm glad you brought that up. I mean, just to kind of deep dive on that, one of my kind of, and I do this unconsciously, but it's one of the conscious things that I do is that obviously having 2 rambunctious kids, and those are the the kind of the levers for growing your children, kind of giving them boundaries and making sure that those boundaries are enforced. I mean, it's a proposition that your job is to prepare your children to work within the world and to prepare them for life and to be good people and to try and eliminate obnoxiousness. And one of the things that I realise that I do is that when I tell my children off or they're struggling with an issue, and or if it's a discipline related thing, I always try and stay touching them, like holding them, so that there's that connection that, hey, this is I may be the police right now, I may be the cop, but this connection, this and these two things are not, they're mutually exclusive. I love you regardless.
Yeah. But
and keep it there, but we've got to deal with this.
Yeah.
And I hope that it turns into the right thing later on. But that's, I suppose, what I'm trying to do is keep that kind of like, no matter what we're talking about here, I still think you're awesome. Yeah.
Well, studies have shown that when little infants lack the touch of someone, that they just tend to die. They'll die off.
No, it's
they're certainly their development is certainly inhibited. Yeah. You know me, man. I'm a hugger. I'm a fucking I'm just a fucking love fucking machine. And because I think it's important that we do that. I think so, and I think people they like it. People maybe aren't as prone to going out there and doing it, but you know what? I think it's very very few people I've ever come across that if I don't know, I'll ask, is it okay? 95% of the time, I'll fucking say because people crave it, man.
Well, totally. I mean, it's a connective thing, and it's like I think it's important with your kids. You got to show them that physical affection, and it communicates something so deep. So yeah, just on that self-esteem thing, I think I realize it, myself, is that when I'm communicating criticism, and this goes to artists as well. It's like, and this is kind of rounding back. One of the problems that I think artists struggle with is that when there is a self-esteem issue, taking criticism becomes a threatening proposition.
Oh, fuck yeah.
But to get great at your art, you've got to be able to cope with feedback.
Yeah.
And the key, I think, with being able to cope with feedback is to find a trusted circle.
Yeah.
People that love you, whether you do a shit song or a killer song, still regard you in the same fashion. Yeah. To find that kind of like inner circle that you trust to go with, and who can criticize you and say that you look ridiculous in those pants, what are you doing with your hair, or that song's not hitting it for me, the riff is boring, or or that lyric's lame, or I know you can do better. Any of that stuff, you've got to be able to have that feedback, even whether it's in a band, or whether it's in kind of like a producer artist relationship, or any of those kind of things, or even with a broader kind of label thing. I think that kind of to and fro, that reflective thing is really important. But what makes it so tenuous for a lot of artists is that when the self-esteem isn't there, they're fragile to the point where they perceive feedback as an attack.
An attack, yeah.
And I think and you know what? In terms of being able to deliver that, I'm a student of that relativity. I'm a student of trying to get better at communicating that stuff.
How do you do a criticism or critics?
How do I deal with it?
Yeah.
At first, let me put it like this. I think I was really lucky in terms of having musical mentors who were able to communicate in that fashion. Like, they were able to communicate, I love you, but we need to deal with this. And I had a great drum teacher in New Zealand, a guy by the name of Bud Jones, who was able to call me on my shit, and at times, I was shit, who was able to call me on my shit, but also have the belief and the training, and the kind of the belief in my growth and the belief in my ability to continually make me want to make it better. He was able to balance both things. He was able to criticize me and grow me.
Yeah.
And I think, but there was also a proposition where I wanted to become better, so I knew I needed guidance and mentorship to do so, and that I saw my peers around me, and some of whom who trained with him, and they were the better ones, and so I went, I want what they've got, so I sought out that mentorship.
Yeah.
The next thing was that when we made our first album, we got this guy, Jazz Coleman. And Jazz Coleman, those of you who don't know, is the lead singer for UK band Killing Joke. And Jazz is fucking balls crazy, but there's a couple of things about Jazz. He's insanely passionate, and in that regard, when he backs something, he backs it
all the way,
all the way. But he's also got a fuse about that long, and patience. So what happens is when things don't go the way he wants, he fucking screams at you. But if you're in a, and this is kind of an interesting thing. But if you're in a fucking heavy band and you are executing, at the kind of like limit of physical kind of strength and speed and passion, when you've got someone who is yelling at you to get that out of you, it actually works. It's a proposition that works. And I think that we went back and we did our last album with him as well, and I recognized that actually that there was a part of us that went egoless, and that he would yell and it would drive us. Yeah. But it was the permission we gave him to be able to kind of bring that energy in that made it work. Yeah. If we struggled with him being like that, if we took offense, if we didn't give him permission to drive that way, it wouldn't have fucking worked for a second. Yeah.
Because then it creates a conflict, and there's no synergy, and there's no going with the flow of where it's going.
Yeah, and I think when you're 44 years old, most of Shihad are in that kind of band between 42 and 44, or all of us are. I think everyone's confident enough now to take that impact and be okay with it, and understand why it's there and what we're asking for there. And it was brilliant, because what happens is that when you get to a certain level of comfort and achievement, there's two things that happen. You get good at your instrument, you get good at expressing through your instrument, and you start to get lazy, because you start to go, oh, I've got this, and this is one of the great lessons about this whole process is that we found ourselves in the position where we started, where we would book out a studio for a week, and what that would mean is that we'd roll in, kind of 10 o'clock. Sweet, I've got to get breakfast. Oh, I've got to get a coffee. Yeah, cool. Just setting up, you got to get into this. Hey, have you seen this on YouTube? Yeah, it's awesome. Hey, listen to this. Check this out.
Distractions,
Hey, man, I need to just call my wife. Yeah, cool.
Email.
Facebook, yeah. Hey, dude,
check.
I've just got to get this in. It's a band, and I need to give them feedback on this. And Oh, lunch? Yeah.
Of course.
Okay, cool. And then, so this would drag on. It's like, oh, let's do a bit of music. So you'd end up spending 8 to 10 hours a day, and the amount of actual time you'd be spending playing music was 30 minutes to an hour and a half. And it was on the basis that, oh, we got this covered. We don't need to dig in. We don't need to try.
Yeah.
Two magical things happened around that is that one, we actually, we got real with ourselves and kind of examined that process. And we actually changed it, and we went, we're only going to work 3 hours in the morning. Everyone's turning their phones off.
Yeah.
We're just setting up, and we're just coming in, and we're just going to go to work, and we're just going to jam, and we're just going to record it, and we're going to look at what we like. We're not going to overthink it. We're just going to jam, record. Record. And we set ourselves up for, I think, 4 weeks like that. And we did, like 55 songs.
Fantastic.
Just in 4 weeks.
Productive.
But only because we were working 3 hours a day with 100% commitment to that work.
Yeah.
But also within that work, we weren't overthinking or trying to over-process it. We were just, it was just coming out. Then the second thing we did, which is genius, is to get a guy like Jazz in, where he's all about you got to go from your gut, you got to go from your instinct, and you got to stop overthinking it and everything like that.
Yeah.
And so having him come in, and he's a brilliant kind of he has an orchestral sense of arrangement and sense of things, so he can really work with stuff and stretch stuff out and bring elements in where he really plays to his strengths. And this the thing is, he is a classical conductor, and he sees rock music in a way that's completely different.
So he brings that kind of classical sensibility to it, or
for arrangement, and for milking, kind of what you were doing. He's very much about the hypnosis stuff and everything, elements that are hypnotic within music, and creating dramatic change, but change that's well earned, and I think that him, but also his energy, whereby if something dragged on too long or was getting too overwrought, it just snap and bring you back into the moment. And then that played into the recording process as well. It was like really powerful experience. But I suppose giving back to that, the idea that there was someone that you could trust, and you could be, you could lose yourself, lose your ego, lose yourself, and trust them to guide the process because the result was going to be so great. And at 44 years old, you kind of need someone like that. You know what I mean? To kick your ass. Yeah. Because you're too smart for your own good. You know what I mean? You know too much for your own good. Yeah. And it was a really important, powerful process that. But I think that's, again, when we talk about younger artists, you often find them struggling with that sense of self-worth versus the critical feedback. Yeah. And it's the artists who are good with that proposition, who have the confidence to kind of be able to play with how they're doing things, that often get a lot of great results. Yeah. When they're bringing in someone like a producer or bring feedback in, to give perspective in their art or how they're presenting it.
Yeah. Well, I think maturity comes into it too, man. Like I said, when as you said now, as you become older, same with me. You find that you learn a bit more empathy. You find you become a little more open-minded, and even when it comes to the whole critics thing, I think that criticism is an interesting thing for me. If I get anything on Facebook that is coming at me, I mean, I haven't been personally attacked or anything like that, but I just find critics in that context are a bit like, you got to treat it like fire. They need fuel and oxygen, so I just don't respond.
Yeah, I think it's the right way to do it.
But having said that, I think you still have to be open-minded enough, because even though someone may come at you with piss and vinegar, sometimes there may be a kernel of truth in that, and that
totally,
and that requires you to, and this is something that we just learn as we go along, because ego is a funny thing. It's a very subversive thing. But you've got to somehow like just say, okay, stop for a second and go, okay, forget about the fact that it's personal, and not take it on board and go, okay, let's just be objective about this, look at it from an outsider's point of view, because there may be something there, and if there is something there, there's a fucking gift in that.
Yep. Yep.
But that requires some awareness. That requires you to be able to put your ego to the side. And when you're young, in your 20s, and you're fucking fueled with testosterone and anger and all that kind of shit, it's very hard for you to fucking cut through all that fog.
Yeah.
But I think as you get older, you do get better. It doesn't say you're not affected by it.
No.
Or, because obviously in the ideal world, it would be beautiful if everyone got along and everyone liked what you did. But there is growth, though, in someone that'll bring some criticism. But funny thing about critics, I've always said that they've never built a monument or erected a statue to honour a critic. And and the fact that we have professional critics, I think, is it's an interesting concept. But critics, as far as I'm concerned, of this, I think I will always respect someone that will come to you with a criticism. But at the very least, you know what? If they can follow it up with a suggestion, you know what, Tom, Tom, I didn't particularly like the sound of that snare. Have you maybe considered using this mic or this? Do you know what I mean? And it could be a piece of shit suggestion, but at the very least, it's not just that's a piece of shit, I don't like it. Criticism.
I mean, look, to me, I define those. I mean, I isolate those into feedback and criticism, and feedback is. What I call feedback is criticism that has a suggestion attached.
Sure.
You know what I mean? And it's also offered in a fashion where it's, isolated from a personal, this is not an attack on you, this is the work or
This is an observation.
This is an observation.
Yep.
But, at the same time, sometimes you have to put your hand up and criticise and say, I don't have a solution, but I'm here for the work to find it. Do you know what I mean? And I think that that's the other position you can take, because you sometimes you will, and particularly in creative, you in whatever field, sometimes you'll look at something and go, this is not right, but I don't know why, and somehow we need to figure this out. And sometimes all you need is enough time and openness to rest your head against the problem for it to pop. Yeah. And oftentimes you find that issue becomes a mindset thing, and there's this great thing that I kind of talk about in the realms of what I'm doing with the book, and also what I'm doing with the course that we've got in development right now, is the creative mindset, or the creative modes, and they are open mode and focus and closed mode, which is, or dream time and focus, and that. Being able to vacillate between those two worlds comfortably and understand when it needs to be deployed, and that you need to generate certain things to have each one work well, becomes part of your kind of creative and artistic arsenal, and getting good at it is part of the journey of being an artist. Yeah. And oftentimes I find that when we have you have a problem, but you don't have a solution, it's about getting to that open mode. And staying there for a while, allowing that answer to come to you. Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah. So I think criticism can get you there. Criticism can unlock the door. Criticism can do that. Sure. But I think that there are people that just that want to take pot shots. And
definitely.
It's
always
one of the things that for me was an enlightening part of my life. Was we as an act, we changed our band name, and what was wrapped around that, the circumstances that were wrapped around that, meant that there was a band of extremely virulent, hateful, kind of like criticism and feedback. And you know what? It's a funny thing, because some of it was right. Some of it was really on point. Some of it was accurate in what they were pointing out. But we'd made a commitment, so we kind of had to follow that path. And that it was a mistake.
You guys even wrote, didn't you guys? You guys wrote an open letter about the whole thing, didn't you? After you changed back from Pacify to Shihad.
And I think that what it was acknowledging a mistake. Yeah. And also kind of going, I mean, what was the core nature of the mistake was that whatever our name meant to us. I mean, to that point, you've got to remember that we had kind of like, the band did this funny little split over that name, because there were basically two members of the band that would you'd hit the dressing room, you'd be, middle of Europe or middle of nowhere, and then it would start to be, we're called Shihad, we're a joke, holy war, lame. And so you'd kind of go into these kind of environments where, things are difficult, or you're away from your family, or you think there's not many people there, or any of those kind of things where, your ego's on the line, and we could not feel pride in the name Shihad.
Yeah.
But as a process...
Shihad's such a rad name.
Oh, well,
it's a fucking rad name.
But you know how it
cool
came out. It's a complete fucking mistake.
Yeah.
It's so hilarious how it's a mistake. I love how much of a fucking mistake it is.
Yeah.
But this is the thing, this is the perspective that you get. But this was the point, is that kind of energy around our identity was always in play, this kind of like sarcastic, humorous shame around it. Mm-hmm. But what we had misunderstood, or the perspective we didn't have, was that during that process, we had actually made Shihad mean something to people.
Yep.
And that we had blinded ourselves to what it meant to them in our own internal discussions. Mm-hmm. And so when, and here's the funny thing, is that the band was split, down two sides around feeling pride about the name and all that kind of stuff. And then when the opportunity came to change it, it was like one from each side crossed over.
Right. Okay.
And it was like
this flip.
I just flipped. It was like one member of the we've got to be proud of our name and we shouldn't fucking change it. Stayed on one side, and one member of our name's a joke. Shihadi-hadi-ho. Oh God, our name's terrible. It's awful. Went to, I'm not fucking changing it. And then and then the other side being, we should be proud of our name. We should, this
Represent.
And then it's like, we should change it. If we can't be proud of our name and it's not, no one knows how to say it, no, we got to change it. It's an opportunity, we've got to change it. And then, one side of the name's horrible, name's horrible, I'm ashamed. Yeah, change it, fucking get rid of it. It was really interesting to watch that dynamic occur. And just in case anyone doubts, I was part of we should try and be proud of the name. We should try and be proud of the name and get some sense of pride around it, and I find it depressing to constantly kind of agitate against it. However, from both a commercial and an opportunity level, I kind of went, no, we've got to refine the brand. And I set an appropriate American. So I was the one who crossed over the other side.
Can I go on a
traitor?
Can I go on a
traitor?
Can I go on a bit of a tangent here for a sec?
Yeah, go for it.
I'm just curious to know, what's your favorite album of your catalog?
I have three.
Go on, tell me what they like.
Yeah, I mean,
I know they're almost like your children. I understand you. You don't want, but
look, okay. So, actually four. Okay, for different reasons, and it's too hard to do. It's too hard. Okay, I've got four pivotal albums for me. Okay. The first album we did with Jazz Coleman, Churn. I look back on that. It's an amazing. It's just the energy, the vibe, the rawness, amazing. Okay. Killjoy was where we found us. And it's a compelling listen, even to me now. I just go, you mastered it for vinyl the other day. It's a compelling listen. And it's amazing one of the great pleasures of art is to create a piece of art that you later on listen to and go, how the fuck did we do that? Like,
and you're still proud of it.
What fucking? What was in the water that made that happen? Like that you can't actually fathom how you pulled it off yourself.
And you're not going to be saying, well, shit, I would have probably done that different. Or maybe you could have, but it's not necessarily a case of like, well, fuck, if I did this today, I would have done it completely different. I would have done it better. You're still proud of it. There's still you still stand by it.
Totally, and it's really interesting because there's a couple of albums that I listen to, and I can forgive the albums that I love for their mistakes and shabbiness, but the albums that I don't really like, it's the mistakes and shabbiness or the things we left off or we glanced over that really bug me still. Anyway, but
Churn, Killjoy,
Killjoy, and then the next great one was the General Electric.
Oh,
I was with
my Desert Island fucking classic. That's my top 10.
Oh, thank you.
That's on my top 10. That's a seminal piece of work, mate. I'm not pissing in your pocket here, but
thank you.
I don't think there's one bad track on that album. The songs are amazing. The production is fucking off its tits. It stands up to date, Tom. Yes, it was done fucking what 2099. 99. There you go. Right. Fucking. I'll tell you. I want to share a great. We'll get back to fourth album, but just I want to share.
Yeah.
I just want to share.
It was done with the best in the world.
Absolutely.
That was just. the fucking
The creme de la creme.
6-star
Yeah.
recording.
You
team.
know.
Yeah.
And but I remember a moment. I was at the time. I just started up at Sing Sing. I started. I worked out of that place, and oh fuck, the guy used to fucking play in Southern Sons and Electric Mary. Come on, come to me, fucking Jack Jones.
Oh yeah.
Well, now he's reverted back to his fucking real name. But the album. We just had a copy of the album. We just had a copy of the album, and we put it on, and Jack Jones was fucking jumping up. We like, oh shit, you not, dude.
Yeah.
Jumping up and down like he was in a fucking mosh pit.
Yeah.
Listening, we fucking bled, and it was just like one of those holy fuck moments of listening. You know, it was. And again, to this day, man, I mean, fuck, it's as perfect as you can fucking get, you know.
Thank you.
I love it. I mean, you can die happy knowing, man, that you've done fucking one of the greatest fucking albums.
Well, I mean, it's like I said, it's funny when you look back on your work, and again, you kind of go, how did we do it? And you know, there's so much that goes into that album.
Yeah.
And part of it is, it's the time. You know, it's the time we spent honing our craft, pushing.
Yeah.
Just fucking pushing and putting the groundwork in, and the personalities involved in it, and the friction and the tension and the, you know, but just the work and the commitment and the you know, constantly trying to get better and have a better effect. And you know, I think that all of that came to a point, and then we just got teamed up with the fucking greatest team, and it just was
Garth, and fucking doing it at the warehouse in Vancouver, and Randy Staub. I'll tell you, Randy Staub taught me how to line up a tape machine. There's a little trivia for you.
There you go.
He fucking taught me to line up a Studer.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool.
You know, when I met Randy back, it was like 83 or that guy, man. He just had the swagger, man. You know, this guy. This guy just fucking knew it, man. I mean, and it wasn't arrogance about him. You know, he had the Bon Jovi hair going on back there. He just had the swagger. It's like he fucking knew he was preordained, dude, for greatness. Do you know what I mean? But he was such a cool motherfucker. And I never forgot him, man. And look at like what he's done, you know, with Bob Rock. And the guy's fucking changed the course of fucking rock history, you know?
There's, you know, look, I mean, we mixed an album with Randy, and it was, opinionated, you know, and he fucking exudes the kind of training and quality of what he does. And you know, he has an opinion, you know, like he fucking cares. You know, and there it is. It's like, you know, he turned around on one song and just went, "This song's on the album? It's fucking annoying." You know, it was great, you know, and it was just like, but he did such a brilliant job, and you know,
did that annoying song make it? By the
yes,
way?
it did.
Which one was it?
Just like everybody else.
Really?
Yeah, it was because of the. Okay. No, he was just going this. I think he's about fucking 8 tracks in, 12 tracks in, and he's listening to this. Going, this is annoying.
Dude, that's a fucking rocket
It's
tune.
an arrangement lesson.
Yeah. Each to their own. And what's your fourth one?
Oh, the last one we did.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, easily. And just because, you know, it's like you feel like you've been, you know, and I think it's that whole thing where, again, it's that focus and that commitment and that drive, and it takes this many more calories at this point to kind of get the band to kind of snap it and focus. But that was a reductive effort. It wasn't like where the General Electric was like maximizing and you know, making the best out of everything and leaving no stone unturned. Five Eye was about.
That's how you pronounce
reduction.
it. I've always wanted to know how to pronounce it. Now it's Five Eye.
Actually, Five Eye is the, you know, the name that they give for the Five Eyes network, which is Australia, New Zealand, Canada, United States, UK. It's the Surveillance Intelligence Network, and it's in all documents. It's written FVEY, Five Eye. That's the network.
I see.
That's the Global Intelligence Sharing Network.
Okay,
that's what it is.
Now, you know, the other thing I loved about that record is I remember seeing a little mini doc about the recording. I love the idea that, you know, you guys went back to your roots, back to home, back to the studio, Royal York Street Studios, which sadly is no longer. Which you have the Neve from.
Well, at the studios in the city, there's a guy who I've formed a really strong business relationship with over the last 18 18 months by the name of Matt Justy. And Matt, I think that, the kudos that I've got to give Matt for reaching out and preserving the EMI console and keeping it in the Southern Hemisphere, and for doing it for so much the right reasons. There's so many people around that console that made that process work. So we've had that console at the studios in City and Brunswick for the last 12 months, and it's kind of been operating under, I suppose, what you'd call a Neve pop-up shop style thing. And it is just truly one of the greatest pieces of engineering for a recording console ever. There's only one of 7 in the world, and we have done I would say the majority of our career has been recorded through that desk. It's that desk holds my my journey, and our journey, and it's given me life. That console.
Well, I remember being there the night when you kindly invited me to. You said we're going to announce something. It's a big surprise, and we came down to the studio and met a whole lot of people and that. And then, but I could see it in you, man. That was when you unveiled it and showed us. That was personal for you.
Oh fuck yeah!
That was personal, and that came across. And
all the best shit in fucking music, in business, or fucking whatever you do, all the best shit's personal.
Yeah. Without doubt, But getting back to the point I want to make was I love the fact that you went back to York Street, back to the original producer, and you guys just went full circle. And it was I love that saying. It's not where you're from, it's where you're at. And I love people that never forget where they came from. They never forget their roots. Yeah. They pay homage and respect to where things started, and not just to dismiss it or have shame about it, or don't want to admit to whatever, and no matter how humble it may be. And I love that, man. I thought there was a real wholesomeness, there was a real authenticity about it, and I thought this is fucking cool, man. Because you guys are at that level where you have enough leverage, dare I say, where you could probably have pretty much who you like. You probably have the luxury of being able to, recording maybe, a bigger
especially nowadays, it's cheaper than ever.
Absolutely. But with a more bigger name studio that's known, for most punters, or from a marketing perspective and a producer, etc. But that to me just shows fucking respect, man. And I really admire that. And I thought that was very fucking cool, Tom.
Well, look, it is one of the great kind of confluences of my life that occurred, and that we were in a position to do that. It was one of them kind of, when life offers you a magic moment, that was one of those magic moments. Yeah. And, we're kind of working things out at the moment to see, what we're going to be, how we're going to roll this out in the future. And I think that, the headline is that there's, I regard it, and I don't think I'm overselling it when I say I think it's the finest recording console in the Southern Hemisphere. Yeah. And it's in the Southern Hemisphere, it's in Australia. Yeah. It could have easily gone north.
Yeah, no doubt. And there's plenty of money up there, mate, that would just snapped it up.
And so it's a sense of huge pride, and also, there's a spiritual side to having that. Yeah. There.
That's beautiful. So what's the future hold for you?
For me, I think I'm really excited about. Look, it's a funny thing. I'm no longer cynical about the potential of music from this point. I think we've actually hit the bottom. Yep. And I see, which I didn't used to see. If you'd asked me 5 years ago, I couldn't see this. I see a pathway where there's going to be a changing of the guard. There's a new pathway. But equally, I think that the great positive about it is those who've been, previously shunned or ignored or live in little corners are now going to find their own communities, and they're going to find an ability to kind of exist as musicians from here on. So I'm excited about the next crop of artists. Like there's a funny couple of things kind of that I'm seeing coming up, and they're trends. Like, and the basic way I put it like this is that there's this one piece of what's going on in music right now that I think's undiscovered and kind of examined, but I'm seeing it pop up left, right, and centre, and that is this, which is when I grew up, born in 1971. I picked up my first pair of drumsticks in I think around 1981, 1982, somewhere around there. Mm-hmm. Yeah, maybe 83, somewhere in there.
Yeah, you're a young pup.
Yeah, young pup. And I sat down, and the proposition was the drum kit, right? Mm-hmm. And the drum kit's kick drum, a couple of toms, bunch of cymbals, and snare drum, and all this. And I took it as a given that this is the instrument. But if we round the clock back 100 years, that instrument didn't exist.
Correct.
And it was separated and specialised. So you would have someone who'd play the bass drum. You'd have someone who'd take the cymbals and smash them together. And then you'd have someone who'd specialise in the rudiments and snare drum. And in particular, the snare drum was the kind of like
the driving
thing,
force,
thing, the kind of the head of the skill thing.
Yeah.
The fact was, over the course of the 20th century, and this is the wonderful thing about immigration as well, the drum kit is a result of immigration.
Right.
Love that, right?
Yeah.
So,
tell us how. Can you explain?
Well,
that to us?
Essentially, you would have things like the Chinese and the Turkish coming into New York City and bringing their percussive instruments and the cymbals and all of this kind of stuff. They'd be coming into America and colliding with traditional orchestral instruments such as the snare and the bass drums and all this stuff.
Timpanis and
all of this. So it all got kind of mashed up together because you had all these different cultures colliding in one place, and then manufacturing also included things. So leveraging manufacturing into physical, the way to play a bass drum with your foot, or to move two cymbals back together, or to put things on stands. Manufacturing, immigration, and the people's creativity gave birth to the drum kit.
Yeah.
Now, 1982, for argument's sake, I took that instrument at face value and just went with it.
Yeah.
There are people here today who are bringing together these disparate elements that are at the moment separate and specialised, or starting to blur, and they are taking it on as one thing.
Yeah.
And what I'm seeing is that musicians who are really leaning in and really getting upskilled at a young level are really, kind of really biting into this proposition. And I come back to the idea that if you are out there, and unless you are trying to be the very best in your field, the prospect of an ongoing, or the craft of being a musician is going to require you to be a multitasker in multiple instruments and to blend them together.
Yeah.
To blend things like keyboards and a drum kit and singing and loop stations, and it's really two things that are driven it. One is technology, the ability for you to be able to do this stuff now as one person or two people, and the other is economy. It's like there is a lack of investment money in music, so having larger groups is no longer as viable as it once was, but also the roles within that group is no longer as there is a solution technologically. So I think we're seeing the reason why there's so many two pieces is because you can fucking do it. Because you can have a two piece and it doesn't have to sound thin. And so but they're the kind of
listen to bands like how many bands King of the North are like two guys that are going are just killing it right now,
and that's in the rock field, and you're seeing that more and more and more. And I look
Royal
after
Blood, another one.
Royal Blood, and I look after a band called Kyra Knife Fight. And Nick Gaffney, who's the drummer, singer, loop master, and everything like that. I mean, he's one of the people I've seen like that. But I'm starting to see more young kids come up and actually accept that as a proposition, without thinking it's something special. They just go, "Oh, I'm going to do that."
Yeah.
The same way I approach the drum kit. Take it at face value and go, well, that's what I have to do. And that is going to turn into a tidal wave in 10 to 15 years' time.
Yeah, I agree. So, before we wind up, if there's anything that you'd want to say to any young aspiring musicians who are, they're either starting or they're kind of made their first steps into a career, what do you think are the things that they should be, and no particular level of importance, but just what are some of the things you would, some of the wisdom that you pass on these kids as they develop as artists, and what are the things that they should be focusing on, do you think?
I think, let me put it like this. I think that the primary thing, I did an interview the other day for the book with a really good publicist by the name of Stacey Piggott, and she rounded off on the idea that really, for most artists, they are enough. That there's a lot of inadequacy out there, that they are enough. That's a personal thing. It's not necessarily about... And
it comes back to that self-esteem thing we were talking about before too.
That they are enough. If they're generating opportunities, that what they have is enough. Doesn't mean that they don't need to go to work to make their art do what they want it to do, or to improve at their skills, or to find all that stuff. It's not about eliminating feedback or improvement. It's just about the sense that you are enough. You can do this. You know, so they are enough. I think the next thing would be get good at music. Everything else just follows. You don't need to put your head too far into gaming the music industry or any of these kind of things. If you get the music right, that is the primary thing. That's all that anyone cares about. So if you make a commitment and put the work in to being great at that, it's going to come home for you. And that's really what it comes down to. And at the same time, you know, you've got to examine and be aware enough of, you know, who have you got around you, and how are you
Your peer group, man. It's
how's your
fucking
peer
everything.
group?
It's
How's your
everything.
peer group? How you're treating the people around you? Have self-awareness, look after yourself. And I think, you know, it's those building blocks of, you know, having a sense of responsibility and a sense of empathy and a sense of awareness as a human being puts you in a great position to be able to go to work on your art.
Absolutely, mate. Absolutely. Well, Tom Larkin,
Thank you, sir.
I fucking love you, man. You're
You
awesome.
too. Thank you.
You've been a
You're
fucking
mastering fucking wonderful work.
Thank you, Tom.
He's so good.
Checks the mail.
He's so good. I choose him myself.
So, no, honestly, thank you, mate. And do you know what? I would love to have you back on soon, because we'd like to find, you know, as you said, your course is still in beta. You're developing it, and because what you're offering, as I said, mate, is, and I'm not blowing steam up your ass here, Tom. It's something different. It's a point of difference, and I would love for you to come back again soon, as more things develop with the course, and you know, and to be able to sort of, you know, get it out there, and you know, for the people that would probably benefit.
Yeah,
from,
I mean, I think
you know, from doing said course, and not just that, man, because you know, you're just a really great, articulate fellow. You've got obviously lots of insights, lots of wisdom, lots of. And it's great. Like, I learned a lot today, and you're wonderful, man. You just wind you up, let you fucking go. But it was great content.
I've never been short of a word. Ask Phil that.
Yeah. And but that's what it's about, man. It's great. I mean, you know, part of this podcast is, you know, this is why it's mastering music, mastering life. It's to, you know, bring people on. Yeah, like, we come from the music industry, we're creatives, but we also get to talk about the life stuff, and you know, which is really important, and the holistic approach to it. And as I said early in the podcast, that's one of the things I really loved about the outline of your course, is that it's holistic and it's practical, and there's good shit in there for people, man. You know, and I think you found something, a really good niche, and I wish you all the best, man. Like I said, I'll be involved. I'll be there. I'll fucking support the fucking help, man, because we need more guys like you out there who are also wanting to push the training aspect, the mentoring aspect. You know, dealing with the health of music. With the health of musicians, their psychology, their well-being, as well as the business and the technology and all the other stuff that evolves around, you know, being an artist in the current, you know, in the current paradigm. So anyway, once again, mate.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much.
And much love to you as well.
Thanks, buddy.
And thank you for having me.
Anytime,
Thanks
man.
so
We're
much.
going to get you back, because, you know, fuck, we could have been here all day, but there's so much other shit that we can talk about, and it's all fascinating. So we'll definitely get you back on again for another one. So thank you very much for watching, everyone. And I'm going to sign off by saying, as I usually do, please be nice to each other, but more importantly, be nice to yourselves. Okay, I love you fuckers. See you later. Bye.